Kylie Alders,
Beebe, Kyra Nichols,
Brynn Karstens.
Despite being so small they can't be seen with the naked eye, pathogens that cause human disease have greatly affected the way humans live for centuries.
Everyone in this room has gotten sick at one point in their life or another. There are many deadly diseases that impact everyone around the world.
First, we will discuss the Black Plague. Second, we will discuss polio. Third, we will go through the HIV virus. And finally, we will talk about the Ebola virus. Let's begin by discussing the Black Plague. The Black Plague is believed to be the origin of modern plague epidemics. According to Mariah A. Spiro, a professor and researcher at the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History, published in the journal Cell Host and Microbe in 2016, this was identified through genetic analysis, and the Black Plague was found to contain a genome that occurs in nearly every modern pandemic, linking the past and the present. This disease was actually 3 separate strains of plague that together wiped out entire villages. This disease originated in China, but became famous for the way that it ripped into Europe. Originally, it decimated the Kipchak army as they attempted to invade Kaffa, which lies in modern-day Crimea. The Kipchak general catapulted infected corpses into the city of Kaffa in an effort to plague those inside. From Kaffa, Genoese ships brought the disease with them to Mediterranean ports. The deadliest time period these diseases inhabited was the 14th century. To be more precise, it was from the summer of 1348 to the winter of 1351. It first made its way to the European coast by boat, and many researchers of the era could track the introduction of the plague as in the time of an infected ship arriving in port. Many originally believed that it was the sailors themselves that carried this disease with them, but that was not the case. Others blamed Jews poisoning the wells, or a foreboding conjunction of the planets, and many eventually agreed that it seemed to be a divine punishment from God. None of these were the case, however, and the actual culprit was migrating Asian black rats, who stowed away on ships and traveled across continents in search of food and bringing with them the fleas that carried this horrifying disease. Each strain had unique symptoms. According to Samuel Cohen Jr., a medieval history professor at the University of Glasgow with over 40 years of experience, in the Cambridge Medical History Journal, published in 2002, 2 of the 3 strands struck in alternating times. Those 2 would be the pure bubonic and the pneumonic plague. The pure bubonic plague was the most well-known of the 2. It was characterized by violent headaches, internal bleeding which caused dark blotches to appear on the skin, and pustules, known as buboes. Buboes were extremely swollen lymph glands that usually appeared in the armpit or on the groin, and they could swell to the size of an orange. People afflicted by this strain usually lasted between 4 and 7 days. The second, pneumonic, was far more infectious than the bubonic. It was spread aerobically, as plague bacteria was sprayed into the air through the exhalation of breath. Many people experienced lung issues, such as the coughing up of blood. People afflicted by this strain often lasted only 3 to 4 days. The final strain, septicemic plague, was a constant threat throughout this time period. It was rarer than the other 2, but far deadlier. Those afflicted by it often succumbed in mere hours, and there are many reports of priests and doctors dying at the bedside before their patients did due to this strain. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, a well-known source of information that has been in publication for over 250 years and published again in 2013, states that the plague struck long before germ theory had even become a thought, evident in the actions people took to prevent this disease from spreading. The outbreak caused widespread panic among Europeans, with many doctors and priests simply running away instead of dealing with and possibly contracting the disease. This radical time gave rise to a new treatment, quarantine. Medieval medicines were absolutely hopeless in combating the plague, in these citizens. And quarantine was the only answer for most of these people. If one person in a family was infected, the entire family would be sealed into their home, windows boarded up and doors locked so the disease could not escape. This, coupled with the lack of effective medicine, led to a drop of about half the European population in this time period. Between 25 and 75 million people were believed to have perished during this time period due to this disease. Now that we have learned about one of the earliest plagues, let's move on to the polio virus.
Polio is a very harmful disease that has affected many people worldwide. David K. Allison, who is the senior scholar at the National Museum of American History, in the journal Whatever Happened to Polio, published in 2005, says that poliomyelitis is caused by poliovirus. These viruses are either DNA or RNA, and since they are neither living nor dead, they need a host to reproduce. Andrew C. Adams, who has an MD from the University of Utah School of Medicine, in the journal Polio, published in 2017, says that polio is a contagious viral illness with two known types. The first type is non-paralytic polio. The second type is paralytic polio. Polio has been affecting our world for centuries. It starts by entering through your mouth, then is taken to the back of your throat where it enters your bloodstream. Once it is in your bloodstream, it is taken with ease to the central nervous system. This is where the virus reproduces and attacks the motor neuron cells at a rapid rate. Once these have reproduced, they are spread through transmission. The way they are spread is through contaminated food or water, as well as in the feces of those who are carrying polio. Polio has been in our world for centuries and was first described in a medical journal by a man named Michael Underwood. After spreading around the United States and the world, polio was eradicated in 1979. However, polio has not been eradicated in all parts of the world. That is according to Dr. Ann Sparrow, professor at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in the Department of Preventive Medicine, in the book Syria's Polio Epidemic, The Suppressed Truth, published in 2014. Polio is still very present and affecting many in parts of the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. There are many recognizable symptoms to help diagnose polio. For non-paralytic polio, the symptoms can include those similar to flu-like symptoms. These include fever, vomiting, fatigue, diarrhea, and headaches. For paralytic polio, much of the symptoms are similar in the early stages of development, but become more serious as time goes on. These more serious symptoms can include muscle fatigue, loss of reflexes, and the feeling of loose and flappy limbs, which can be known as flaccid paralysis. In more severe cases of paralytic polio, there could be nerve injury, which can lead to paralysis and death. Those who have had polio may also experience post-polio symptoms. These symptoms can include increased muscle fatigue, reduced tolerance for cold temperatures, and trouble breathing and swallowing. Although these are many very scary symptoms, thankfully there are preventive actions that can be taken to help remove polio from our world. When there was a large polio outbreak in the United States, one of the most common ways of treatment was the iron lung. Patients would lay on a bed inside the machine with their head sticking out onto a pillow. The side of the machine also had portals so that hot packs, limbs, and sheets could be adjusted with ease by doctors and nurses. It was introduced in the early stages of infection when doctors noticed that patients had trouble breathing due to the fact that the muscles in their chest had become paralyzed. This machine would help patients breathe long enough and keep them alive so that their body could fight off the disease. It was invented in 1927 and updated throughout the years to become more efficient and technologically advanced. Although this method was effective at the time, one of the best ways to help prevent polio transmission is through vaccines. There are two polio vaccines. IPV, which was invented by Jonas Salk, is an injected shot that is used mostly in the United States of America and Europe. OPV, which was invented by Albert Salvin, is an oral drip that is used around the world to help prevent polio transmission. Now that we have learned more about polio, let's discover more about HIV.
HIV has affected 1.1 million people in the U.S. today. This map shows the concentration of adults and adolescents living with HIV currently. So what is HIV exactly? HIV stands for Human Immune Deficiency Virus. According to Sarah Hand, who has been working for HIV prevention and behavior change communications internationally since the mid-1990s, in the Journal of Birth, published in November of 2017, states that HIV is a physically and sexually transmitted disease. This virus attacks white blood cells in our immune system, which is our body's natural defense against illness. This can be very dangerous because it can cause a weaken in a person's immune system. Without treatment, it can become harder and harder to fight off infections and diseases and could lead to AIDS. In Africa in the late 90s, researchers found a strain of an SIV virus in chimpanzees that was almost identical to the HIV virus found in humans. The researchers who discovered this connection concluded that chimps were the main source of the HIV virus. And at some point in time, these species crossed from chimps to humans. There are 3 stages in an HIV infection. The first stage, a person may feel like they have the flu. Symptoms can include headache, body ache, sore throat, and upset stomach. In the second stage, a person has passed the acute primary stage and may start to feel better, with no symptoms for up to 10 years. However, the virus is still active in the body, creating new cells throughout. In stage 3, a person's immune system is so badly damaged that they can't fight off serious infections and illnesses. The earlier a person is diagnosed with HIV and starts treatment, the better their long-term health will be. Neil M. Ample has a medical degree from Oregon Health and Science University of Medicine and has been in practice for more than 20 years. In the journal Mayo Foundation for Medical Education and Research, published in January of 2018, states that these preventative actions will help stop the spread of HIV. HIV vaccines are recommended, however, they don't provide full coverage. HIV is not curable, however, the antiretroviral treatment has a range of drugs that target different stages in the HIV life cycle, which can be very effective. When used correctly, it helps your immune system stay healthy. It provides a person to live a happy and healthy life. We now know more about HIV. Let's move on to discussing Ebola.
Ebola has affected thousands of people around March of 2013. The fatality rate of Ebola is between 30 to 90%. Ebola is a single strand of RNA that attacks your immune and circulatory system. According to Helen Brownsville, a medical reporter for the past 15 years in the Canadian press, and the journal Scientific American, published in March of 2015. Ebola is a deadly disease, but it is not the most contagious. There are 5 strains that have affected animals and humans. The first 4 have affected humans are the Zara virus, Ebola virus, Sudan Ebola virus, the Bundi-Bugyo Ebola virus, and the Thai forest Ebola virus. Thai forest has only had 1 case of infection. There is one that has affected only animals, which was the Rastan Ebola virus. Ebola is not completely effective in each one. Ebola has affected mostly the continent of Africa. According to Sylvian Bays, a researcher for the Institute Pasteur and the New England Journal of Medicine, published in October of 2014, shares that the Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea, Sudan, Gabon, Uganda, West Africa, and Liberia were all the main countries that were affected. The first known or pre-assumed death of Ebola was in December of 2013. By January, 8,500 deaths were totaled in 2014. In mid-January, there was presumed to be 1,000 cases of Ebola. The virus that only affected animals was only found in the Philippines. There are few known causes and symptoms of Ebola. Some common ways to get Ebola would be from bat feces, monkey feces, chimpanzee feces, or bushmeat. Bushmeat would be left out meat so it's warm and can become infected. Stated by Paul Richards, a university professor in Ebola anthropology, published in January of 2015. Few other ways to contract Ebola would be by bodily fluid contact through saliva or blood, or being around the deceased who have been infected or possibly affected with Ebola. Some symptoms of Ebola would be fever, vomiting, muscle pain, weakness, and major headaches. There are 3 preventative actions that have been tested or are being researched. The first of which is ZMapp, which is artificial antibodies being injected into your bloodstream. Ken Brantley, an American missionary doctor who was working in Liberia, was affected with Ebola and received ZMapp. And after he got ZMapp, within 1 day he was up to shower. The first vaccine that was researched was CAD3 EBO, which was only made for the original strand that they found of Ebola. The other vaccine that they had was the RBSV ZEBO, EVBO. This vaccine was found that it was relatively effective in almost all the cases who had received it. As you can see, there are many deadly diseases around the world. First, we discussed the Black Plague. Second, we informed you about the polio virus.
Third, we explored the disease of HIV, and finally, we discussed the deadly disease of Ebola.
There are many deadly diseases that impact everyone around the world.
Despite these pathogens being so small they can't be seen with the naked eye, the impression they leave on our world can be seen.
1705.